And now we'll go to my colleague, Ms. Malcolmson, for 7 minutes.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks to Mr. Spengemann for the bill. I appreciated your caveat that this isn't meant to be celebratory. However, there's nothing in the bill that says that. I'm going to propose to the committee that we call this Gender Equality Action Week, so I'd be interested to know if your focus is actually on taking action, then I'd be interested to know whether that's something that you would consider. So you say that in your introduction you said governments cannot do this work alone, and that is true. I would argue that the frontline organizations and the women's movement, especially during the Conservative decade in power, really carried the work of gender equality, and we're also recognizing an enormous hole in federal government action. And I think you were in the House when I gave my speech, and you know that I supported your bill at second reading, but I'm discouraged that despite the very stark list in the preamble that you outline, you ring the alarm on all kinds of issues facing women: the cost of the economy of violence, the continued pay gap, the lack of pay of childcare, the violence for Indigenous women, and on and on and on. You raise this huge, ring this huge alarm, but the remedy is so minute. So I'd like to ask why you didn't take a more prescriptive approach. So we've had a motion in the House a year ago committing to implement pay equity, proactive pay equity legislation. The committee recommended that the government table that legislation this coming June. We've had the government say late 2018. So can I ask, what's your view on implementation of pay equity legislation as a way to actually take that federal leadership on gender equality, and what should the timeline be in your view?
Ms. Malcolmson, thank you very much. There's a number of questions embedded in what you've said, but thank you for your advocacy, for your championship, and also for supporting the bill at first and second reading. I'm grateful. Should it be Gender Equality Action Week? Let me take that question first. I think ideally at the outcome of each annual Gender Equality Week, there will be a set of actions, actionable items, or even real progress that can be identified. It is action as much as it is awareness. It's reaching out to all Canadians. It's going all the way to the elementary school level, if not even earlier, and saying to Canadians, here are some issues, and unless you get engaged, that's the soft message, unless you get engaged as Canadians, we are going to have a problem legislating our way to success. So what I was hoping for to really is giving the public some levers to put pressure on us through the pathway of raising awareness and through the pathway of identifying solutions. And I would like to see nothing further than communities to get engaged on the issue of pay equity, to have some marches, to have some protests even, to have some academic works that underscore with additional data as needed just how profound the gaps are, but as we saw on the economic side, also how significant the opportunities are if we make actual progress. You'll appreciate that this is a private member's bill. It's not something that'll have financial implications, and nor would I purport to speak for the government, which has its own executive programs and agenda. With respect to pay equity, absolutely. I see it as a human right, and I think progress on pay equity will be extremely welcome. And I think the government is in the process of working on the issue. And I mean, how could we not champion it? But what I'm seeking to do through this private members initiative is to make sure that across the country we have greater awareness on the pay equity gap, on the opportunity, and through that we basically generate fertile ground for government action to actually connect with Canadians and to solve this issue fully, rather than just in a top-down.
I would argue that the public's had lots of opportunity to protest for pay equity. It's been 40 years, and we would really rather see the government lead on this so that the frontline organizations do not have to spend their time away from their clients and protesting instead. You flagged the fact about the low rate of women elected to Parliament, just 26% this year, even though women make up 50% plus of the population. How did my colleague Kennedy Stewart brought in a private member's bill intended to remedy, to create incentives for political parties to get more women on the ballot. So I'd like to know how you voted on that bill, which would have provided a tool to bring more gender balance to Parliament.
I'm not somebody who's in favor of quotas, either at the party level or nationally. I've worked in jurisdictions with the United Nations.
Respect, it wasn't a quota bill.
Well, but you know, legislating outcomes basically, right? Prescribing outcomes in terms of.
That's not what it said.
That's something I don't favor. What I favor, and through this initiative, it's reflected in this initiative, is that we really empower men to step to the side of women, so that we get more women, not just on the ballot as a net outcome, but more women wanting to run and being able to run. Right. So there are initiatives like the Scottish government, for example, has put forward an initiative to make sure that men have the ability or will enter into primary caregiving roles in early childhood much more easily than they do at the moment, empowering women to actually step forward and seek political office, not because we need more women in Parliament, but because they want to be on the ballot, they want to serve, and they want to have the opportunity.
And do you
so
believe
it's more of a bottom-up
your
approach.
bill gives that opportunity to women more than the private member's bill that my colleague brought forward, which would have given parties incentives to nominate more women for the voters to choose from?
Again, my approach is a bottom-up approach, which is really empowering women as a society to take that step, rather than parties saying we will have more women, on our slate. The top-down approach has to be met by a bottom-up approach to actually empower women, not just empower them, but actually make them want to run, not because a party calls them and says, we'd really like you to, and there's nobody else, and please run, but because she feels that this is the right thing to do and that she should be enabled to serve when she wants to. I think that those two have to meet, those two approaches.
This committee recommended gender-based analysis legislation be tabled in Parliament by this coming June. The government has said now they're not sure at all when or if that will happen, certainly not this year. What's your view on legislating gender-based analysis as an action to get gender equality?
Well, look, I'm proud of what the government's done so far. I'm very proud that my office, all 6 of us have completed gender-based analysis training. We continue to advocate it. It's absolutely critical that policy outcomes reflect gender-based analysis. Anybody who looks at this program, this particular training course, will consider it to be a no-brainer. I can't speak for the government in terms of timelines of legislating it. But again, my point is, with this entire initiative, is that we cannot legislate ourselves to success unless we have broad public awareness, and in some cases quite willingly invite more public pressure than we've had in the past.
Excellent. Well,